All right, welcome to the Tabletop Miniature Hobby Podcast. My name's Matthew, and on this episode, I'm joined by Karl of the Chicago Skirmish Wargames. How you doing, Karl?
Doing great, thanks, Matthew.
So Chicago Skirmish Wargames is a club, isn't it?
Yeah, we've been meeting for a little over a decade in Chicago, just doing what the name says, just war games in Chicago.
And how did that come about? Like, were you involved in setting that up back in the day?
So I was contacted on the Song of Blades and Heroes Yahoo group. Remember Yahoo groups?
Yeah.
By a gentleman in the area who was looking to just find opponents. And he found myself and another friend, and the three of us really enjoyed Song of Blades and Heroes, which we'd all kind of gravitated to as this cheap, quick way to get back into wargaming. And it just stuck. The three of us became 4, then 6, averaged about 8 to 10 people over the years. But always kind of, even playing bigger games, coming back to this small, cheap skirmish kind of format.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So Song of Blades and Heroes there, it's no stranger to the listeners of this podcast, and it's a game I play myself. So would you say that that's one of your favourite games over the years?
It still is. Don't play it as much as we used to, but I can literally never had a bad game of it. I've recently had the chance to introduce my children to it, and even my daughter, who is Hero Quest is about as much as she wants to do, will get in there, get some fun miniatures on the table. You know, really, it doesn't stop. It's a game that keeps giving.
Yeah, I was looking on the website there, and obviously I'll put all links in the show notes. But you've got a post here. I'm just looking at the date. Was it last year it was? You published this. So it's Song of Blades and Heroes with my kids.
Yes, that was a good one. We just kind of dove right in. I tried to make it as pretty as possible, loading up the table with scenery, making something fun for them to be engaged in. And sometimes I can largely sit back and just kind of play referee for the two of them.
Mm-hmm. It looks great. Lots of great photos here. So the kids took to it really well. Then what age did you say they are?
So they are 9 and 12, I think. But I'll have to check their dates later.
Yeah, aye.
But yeah, they're and so we didn't start too early with both of them. We, for years it was just Hero Quest. Sean Patton of Necromonicon, now called Iron Hands, has a bunch of kid-friendly rule sets. My son and I played a bit of Star Crashers when he was, 6 or 7. But it's only the last couple of years where they've been willing to sit down and explore this with me. And it just happens that, now I have all the wargaming toys to entice them.
So would I be pushing my luck with my wee girl? She's like not 2 yet. So would that still be a wee bit too soon? But we're on the wooden block stage where I build a tower and she knocks them over. So that's sort of our war game at the moment.
Yeah, just plant a few miniatures around the playroom so they're in her field of view, and she becomes enamored with them over time, maybe. Subtle reprogramming of the children.
So any other games that you get the kids involved in then at the moment?
So with my daughter, the only other one is Hero Quest, which has proved... We bought the... we were playing with a friend's vintage set, and he took that back because Hero Quest is amazing and you want your vintage set back. But we bought in on the Hasbro Kickstarter thing, and that's been great. They keep coming back to it. They keep wanting to play. I can get my wife involved. It's the only war game that we all do as a group. Mm-hmm. But my son has gone in, as I think any 11th grade sci-fi interested child would, on the Warhammer universe. And I am not about to let him join the Warhammer book carousel. So we've taken wholeheartedly to one-page rules. Mm-hmm. And that Grimdark Future has been great. And again, it's a rule set that he doesn't really need me to teach him anymore. He just plays, and he's had friends over, and we can teach both of them the rules in about 5-10 minutes, and then they can do it themselves. So yeah, it matches.
I got the rules, a lot of the one-page rules, a year or two ago. I've never actually got to play in them, but I read through the rules, and super simple, like very accessible. So have you actually played some games of them then?
We played quite a few games of Grimdark Future. It really does encapsulate a Warhammer-like pulpy experience in a real streamlined way. The more skirmishy level ones are I don't know if they're quite as fun. They're enjoyable, and they're roughly almost the exact same rules set. But Grimdark Future in particular feels like a Warhammer battle, but plays much faster and is free. And my son, it's so accurate. My kid can actually take an old codex from a couple years back, find the options and that he wants to arm his figures with, and he can find the exact same layout in their little very handy web app.
Yeah.
So it's fairly seamless for him to enjoy that universe he's interested in without, getting on the book buying carousel.
Yeah, you want to steer clear of that, don't you? So with the war game, with the Skirmish Club, then I did see you were playing some Kings of War as well, which obviously isn't a skirmish game. So how do you find that?
So Kings of War was something that I've been trying to gently prod the group towards for many years now. We've played a few games over the years, but I wanted to do a campaign. And when we kind of regrouped after COVID, it was around Kings of War, just getting interested in playing something big in fantasy. And by this time, most of us had collected sizable armies for different games. So it was a lot of fun. We just wrapped up about 2 months ago, and just in time to use the new red compendium book rules that Mantic has released, which have siege rules, which are actually pretty well executed, easy to use. I can't speak to the balance, having only played one game of them, but we were able to, having never played a siege game before, use the siege game on our final campaign day, and it didn't hurt at all. And of course, being Chicago Skirmish Wargames, we've got a ridiculous variety of armies involved. We've got Vintage Games Workshop, Chaos, and we even had one fella for Kings of War bring out some Tharks, riding their six-legged beasts from the John Carter of Mars series. There's one fella who plays with Song of Ice and Fire minis. And because King of War is so modular and element tray based, anybody's army fits right in.
With the Wargames Club, then the Skirmish Club, would you say that the ethos of the club is quite open, and it sounds that way? Like you're prepared to try all these different games, and you're not looking for like official ranges and all this. It's very much a what we've got and what we could create mentality.
It's very much that. We came from a variety of backgrounds coming to Song of Blades and Heroes, and the Song of Blades and Heroes ethos is, whatever miniatures you have, you can play with. And so we've carried that into every single other game that we played. We dabbled in Tomorrow's War, Kings of War. There was a number of post-apocalyptic war sets we tried over the years, and Conflict 47 a little more recently. And there again, none of these games, most of them have an official range, but we've never made any real efforts to stick with that. And part of it is just wanting to remain accessible. Mm-hmm. We've also always tried to have enough figures on that guests could stop in and just, all right, you show up, you want to play, here's your figures, here's your list, jump right in and play. We don't get guests that often, being in a basement-dwelling wargame club, but the idea that anyone can participate has been really important to us, and not to make a budgetary restraint on that. And on top of that is that we all love old miniatures. I mean, one of our best memories was buying a literal bin of lead from a convention, and then we all go sorting through it and divvying it up, and everyone taking some, and of course selling some more to buy more, and just and so if you look at our armies, even folks like myself who lean towards we're Kings of War, leaning towards a more chaos look, but there's going to be old Ral Partha in there. There's going to be a little Privateer Press, maybe. There might be old, definitely going to be a fair helping of EM4's Grenadier stuff, just loving and understanding the history of miniatures and being able to incorporate that into games even today is an awful lot of fun.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think that as well, like when you're, cutting costs isn't necessarily the right term, but when you're trying to keep things on the cheaper side, there's a lot of invention and creativity there because you're pulling from what you can, and you're really, you're making the best of what you've got, and you can, a little could go a long way sometimes, can't it, with the right sort of approach and attitude?
Very much so, and you're not limited to one game when you're buying on the cheap or you're buying vintage miniatures. Not only are you enjoying these fantastic works of art from like some of the best sculptors ever, regardless of whether they're plugged into a game or not, but I can play one. You can have multiple war bands, multiple games, multiple eras, genres, all without making a serious financial dent. Because, I think I just straight up call it cheapskate gaming. It's kind of what we do.
Yeah.
And if you start with your focus being Song of Blades and Heroes, wherever you go, that's going to go with you.
Mm-hmm. So,
and that's not to say we don't have standards. You will almost never see a painted miniature on our table. So, an unpainted miniature upon our tables.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, we're not snobbish about it, but sometimes that means that it's a pre-painted D&D figure that winds up on the table.
Mm-hmm.
But then when we come, we're all busy folks, and we take that night out of a week to go in together. You never get anything less than a great looking table with good terrain and, figures that have paint on them are coming alive. So kind of accessibility while retaining a nice standard is, I think, a really kind of a guiding light for me and hopefully for most of the members of the club.
So cheapskate gaming, like, is there any more to tell us about that sort of ethos?
No, I mean, it's just a matter. One thing that we do a lot, of course, is help each other out. So as there's 8 people who have, all getting towards their 40s and have collected, a lot of times the things that you need for gaming are already in your friend's collection, and he may not even want them anymore. So a lot of cross trading. I just acquired a ridiculous amount of Quar from a fellow who was painting up. Are you familiar with Quar?
No.
These are Joshua. I think his last name is Qualitary. Has this range. It's World War I anteater people.
Right.
I kid you not. It's the cutest, nastiest thing you ever seen. And fella had bought a whole box years ago, and he painted up the ones he wants. Now they're in my hands. I'll take some. Some will probably go on to other members. So there's this kind of circle, almost communitarian kind of approach. Sometimes we get together and everyone brings a bunch of miniatures, and we're basically paying each other $1 each for whatever mins we pull out of bins. And there's so it's cheapskate isn't just about, being cheap. Having nice things and supporting each other is a big part of it as well.
Mm. With a Wargames club, then, how, I don't suppose there's official rules here, but how do these things work for you guys? Like, does the club collectively own anything, or is it all just like your own collections of stuff that you bring together?
So essentially it is whatever we each bring. A lot of that has fallen to me over the years because my home has typically tended to be one of the main places we meet. We have a couple different people who homes they meet in. I think we've discussed a bit on the Discord that the regional differences in housing, depending on where you are in the world. And most folks here in Illinois, in Chicago, where I am, or nearby Chicago, have a basement, and that's a real boon. But I've always had a basement or a size or an area in which we can set up. So I have a large terrain collection, parts acquired from other people. But the one thing we just started doing, which is kind of neat as a collective, was to form a club bits library. I've got 10 guys. Many of us have been gaming for more than 20 years or more. And so just taking all these bits we've got, organizing them in trays and put them in a few boxes so that if someone needs a bit, they can just open up the boxes, go in and find what they need. Again, it feeds the community ethos. It feeds the cheapskate ethos. It's just something fun to go treasure hunting when you have a miniature you want to make unique.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a lot of fun that way.
Yeah, that stuff comes in handy. I got rid of a load of stuff not that long ago. Ooh. And then I was, then I needed 2 arms for a guy, and I was like, what did I do that for? But you live and learn, or I don't actually. But what about terrain for the club? Again, is it just like you all have your own terrain and you put that together? Because terrain's obviously, it's a bit more bulky than miniatures, especially for storage.
Yes, and again, the having a basement and having garages is great for terrain in a club. And so typically I will provide most of the terrain. I'll actually keep it out in the garage in tubs. I have unfortunately no longer room to put a car in my garage, but such is the price of being a Wargames club organizer.
Priorities.
But exactly, priorities. But the tubs come in, they get set up. And so you want to have, on any given night, it could be a desert setup or it could be a forest. We can do, the stuccoed housing that could be either the Mediterranean or the American West. And then, of course, my obsession is science fiction terrain. Science fiction urban terrain is kind of my obsession and forte.
Why is that?
I don't know. I think it's probably from growing up on Star Wars. That chunky, dirty, heavily greebled pipes coming out of all kinds of strange places. And it's an aesthetic I found a lot of fun with toy bashing in particular, which kind of, I don't know if that's actually a term. That's something I use for chopping up old toys and creating terrain out of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a mild obsession of mine.
Yeah, talk to us a wee bit about that. Like, what are some examples of toy bashing then?
So there's a couple of good ones on the Chicago Skirmish Wargames website, but the most recent one would be acquiring a large Paw Patrol jet. It's about 2.5 feet by 2.5. This monstrosity. It's, of course, from the Goodwill, which is a resale shop area around here. It's, of course, missing the cockpit and other things, but you see the shape, and that shape has potential. And so you take that back to your shop and you look at it for a while. You dig into your bins of parts, which are, again, part of the reason why I cannot fit a car into my garage. And what goes here, what goes there. So part of it is, you maybe apply a bit of plastic card to cover over the missing spots, and then you just go nuts with different parts. And so on this particular piece, there were plastic coffee skewers and the grating from medical devices, and there are chopped up bits of Star Wars toys that were $1 because they were broken at the resale shop. And so it's actually a system. You're starting obviously with this toy that you build on, but it's very similar to what model designers do when they take apart model kits and then just greeble or rough up, add all the detail onto it. And so in the end, you have this thing that builds faster, is then having to build it from absolute scratch. Looks unique, is very cheap. And, it's a big toy. So when you put that down on the corner of your table at Adepticon, it's a real, draws people to your table. And so having a Dremel and a motor tool, being able to chop apart plastic toys at will, and usually you want to use polystyrene so you can glue them together easily, you can create some pretty amazing stuff. And it's a lot of fun. And it makes things so much faster because toys have detail on them already. Mm-hmm. They've already got all the pipes and grates and everything. You just got to chop those sections out and glue them together in an interesting way. If anyone wants to dive into that more, again, Sean Patton's Necromondicon, now it's called Iron Hands website, is just overflowing with amazing ways of taking toys and turning them into really interesting gaming terrain, spaceships, that sort of thing.
Let me show you something. I always do this. It's an audio podcast, and I'm like, let me show you something. Yeah. Let me show you something.
I would have brought some to show if I'd known we were going to go visually here.
When it was Halloween recently, right? I saw this for like £2. Okay, so talk the listener through what you could see there on the video screen.
So, dear listener, we have what appears to be a very large bird skeleton. And so we look at this thing right here, and what do we want it to be? Well, so what do you want it to be, Matthew?
Well, Christ, I've just broke his wing off there. So what I want him to be is two winged. He can only fly around in circles now. But no, what I was thinking was like, I mean, I've broke the wing off anyway, but could that be some sort of big piece of skeleton terrain? You could maybe sit it on a base. You could have the skull lying,
For sure. I mean, think about what you want to add to there. With that right there, you can basically make an excellent blocking hill. Dollar stores around us are great for that. You'll see around Halloween smaller skeletons. Mm-hmm. Or you can go totally crazy nuts, which if you'll notice in the middle of your large bird, you've got a lot of hollow space.
Yeah.
Turn that into a cockpit. Mm-hmm. Put some gears and make it look like the wings are power, and you could turn that into a steampunk flying machine.
So a big vulture skeleton steampunk.
Sure.
The feet are good as well. Like I think the feet could work as something.
Yeah, you could make a walker. The other thing that sometimes you see is bones. If you do it right and you combine it with a bit of brickwork, they can be made into structures as well. So you could have a chaos temple can come out of that. I wish the viewers could see the lovely rib cage. There's so many possibilities with that thing.
Yeah.
It goes all the way around.
He's not at his porridge, is he? He's starving.
And that would be all very different for me. I'm usually stuck in the sci-fi realm, but now I'm thinking all kinds of crazy fantasy. It could be a wizard's tower in there.
Yeah.
With put some branches and trees coming up through it.
Yeah.
So you have this giant thing that has now got something living in it. So that's just kind of where toys take you places.
Yeah. No, I saw it and I thought, I'm going to have that. A couple of quid. I'm going to do something with that. And I've broke his wing off. You know what? It could be, you know, our character in Rangers of Shadow Deep, Vinny the Vulture. This is like, well, he's dead.
For sure.
I don't think Vinny's ever died, but this would be how he would look if he was dead. So anyway, I'll keep you posted on that, Karl, if I do something with it.
And the neat thing about a lot of that toy stuff is you take it apart into its component parts and then maybe rebuild something entirely different. So maybe Vinny's head becomes something very large sticking out of a hole in the ground for a train. Mm-hmm. Maybe his rib cage becomes a vehicle or a house or something else. But being able to get that Dremel out. Do you guys have what's the motor tool brand in the UK?
I think we've got that. Yeah, I'm like the least handy person on earth, so I'm not sure.
So there's a secret. It's called a Dremel 543-bit, and it's this plate of steel with big nicks taken out of it. And with this thing, you can cut through any plastic toy. You can just chew through it, and you can also use it to shape that and smooth the edge. I keep one always with that bit plugged in at my workspace all the time, and I'm just cutting stuff out, sanding it, shaping it, pulling it together.
Yeah.
And being able to take things into their component parts and then rearrange them is kind of the essence of this. I call it toy bashing. I know there's probably some better term for it, but
if I bought something like that and came home with it, my wife would be like, "You're finally a man. Like, what are we going to do? We're going to do some shelves. We're going to fix the bathroom." No, I'm way to play with my toys. Sorry.
Well, it's a nice small one, so she might still see that and assume that you are indeed still not a man.
Yeah,
so
yeah. What about like you ever dabbled in like toy dinosaurs or that? I've seen a lot of great examples of people just basing a toy dinosaur up and painting it up, and it looks like something you would buy out of Games Workshop for like 30 quid. So.
We have a couple of members who have done some neat stuff, and usually it does tend to revolve around like how-does and things that are riding on top. Almost all of my toy bashing has been around sci-fi and post-apoc, but the creation of vehicles is a whole nother thing. It's spaceships, the 1/43rd scale vehicle market, and 1/48th is just ripe for Mad Max type stuff. We once ran a convention game with a 2-foot long table, but that was 2 feet deep and 14 feet long. And lots of, again, 28 millimeters. So lots of 1/43rd and 1/48th vehicles, including, of course, a tanker to kind of redo for convention games, the Mad Max fuel chase. Remember that from, I believe it was the Road Warrior, where Mad Max is trying to defend the fuel truck from the various baddies who are on the waste. And and that was all toy cars. It was just toy cars and desert terrain. So the creation of vehicles. But as for the biological dinosaurs and stuff, I personally have not done a whole lot with creatures. It's all been science fiction stuff.
Yeah, I'm that's what I'm going to try as well soon as the dinosaur stuff, just to see how it goes. Basically, I like the thought of buying something for £1.50 and making it look like it might have cost 7 times that or whatever. So
yeah, I mean, there's a whole once you dive into even toys as miniatures beyond just toys as terrain, things start popping up. We have, again, another Americanism. The Dollar Tree has a line of action figures called Final Faction, and they've got a bunch of, and of course they're more traditional 3 1/4 size figures, but their buggy alien types are amazing, and they look an awful lot like Tyranids to begin with. They got little legs, and so you go in there and you get 2 sizable aliens for $1, and with a coat of paint and putting them on a base, you're there. It's done, and that's not something you can say about the rest of the gaming universe.
Because with Rangers of Shadow Deep, I did end up like you need giant spiders for a few of the missions, and I did end up buying, I can't remember where I got them, but proper miniatures, if you like. But I very nearly had a big packet of just like rubber spiders, kids' toys, and I would have been quite happy to use them. It's a giant spider, so
it is what it says on the package. And especially when you're thinking about stuff for one-off campaign events or a scenario you might never use again. Mm-hmm. Giant spiders are a staple, very useful. But if you're a sci-fi guy and you want to throw together a spider scenario, why not just buy a pack of 144 plastic spider rings, and chop the rings off and throw them on the table and maybe give them a bit of a dry brush so they look right. But it just the whole cheapskate ethos isn't just about not spending money; it's about widening your horizons. If things cost less, you can do more of them and in more variety. So that's just kind of it's not just about pinching those pennies, although that is certainly part of it.
Mm. What are some other examples of terrain that you've built in recent years?
The big thing that we do a lot of for a lot of our convention games, I don't know if you remember the Dust Tactics game. That was a sci-fi it was a weird World War II game from Paolo Parente at the time. It's gone through several iterations. Any fan of Dust will cry at the number of times the game has died and been reborn. But just acquiring in a sale a massive number of their building kits, which are they basically look identical walls, and then build 7 or 8 large buildings, and then greeble the crap out of them, and you end up with this enormous science fiction city. So, and then you take that city and you go to the convention, get an 8x8 table, and we run Mech Attack, which is an open-ended, simple, cheap mech combat game. But we're running a mech combat game at 28 millimeter scale with large, mechs. So if you think about our lineup of mechs in that game is going to have mechs from wherever we were able to find them. Old Macross toys, Robotech toys, actual gaming miniatures such as RoboGear or Cryomech, things from the MechWarrior Dark Age universe. And then you have this spectacle comes together, and what I would joke with people is that I basically have these massive array of mechs for you to choose from, and not one of them cost more than the tiny little BattleTech metal figure. So I got off the top. Where are we talking about? Terrain? Or are we talking about models?
Terrain.
Yeah, let's returning to terrain. So let's see what else we built recently. I would send the approaches to terrain differ quite a bit, and I would kind of send a spotlight to one of our members who just finished a bit of terrain that is the most artistic thing I've ever seen. He built a castle out of just panels of thick chipboard. So it's basically squares of thick chipboard, and rather than attempting to greeble, took the exact opposite approach and hand painted it. So in his very unique style, again, I think there's more of that. And it's what we use for the siege battle. But it's this beautiful setup that appears like you're gaming inside a comic book almost. So he's painted it with oil paints, and it's very impressionistic. But here is an approach to terrain that is basically, it's still 3D, but it's relatively, straight edged. But it's all gorgeously painted. Another way to kind of immerse yourself in here. And I don't think he was doing it for budget reasons, but it does fit within the budget thing when you're simply dealing with chipboard and paint. But and then to top it all off, this would be of use to those who maybe over on their side of the pond living in smaller spaces. The entire castle nests within itself. So you start out with a cube that's about maybe 1.5 feet, about 1.5 feet, 1.5 feet, and out of that comes a castle that fills the better part of maybe a 2x2 or a 3x3 footprint. And that's just when you have a number of players in the club and you're each approaching things from your own direction, you end up with some really beautiful and unique work. So again, that's another terrain bit. And then, it's just whatever is needed is what we come up with for terrain wise.
With the club then, are you guys like collectively saying we could do with this or we could do with that and delegating what to do, or is it all just on everyone's back? I'm just making this thing and I'm going to use it at some point.
There have been a few times when you get together and you all work together for a project. The most common time we did that was actually for there was a fundraiser for a friend's charity he was kind of associated with, and so we just got together and built a whole bunch of small terrain pieces that he could raffle off at a game event for that. But when it comes to our own terrain, generally it's just whatever people are really passionate in, they dive down those rabbit holes. And I'm not the president, but as the organizer, I kind of part of what I see my job to be is just to look at those rabbit holes they're in and find a way to sweep that back into what we're doing. So the gentleman, Matthias, who built this fantastic hand-painted terrain set, it gets some use in his little skirmish games. Bring that in to make that a focal part of our campaign. We had there was, find out where what people's passions are and just kind of suck that into what we're doing. And it helps that being the organizer and being most passionate about terrain, more so than most members, that falls to me in other situations.
How often does the club meet then to play?
So we meet twice a month. There was a time when we were meeting every other week all the time, up till COVID times. But now it's on the second and fourth Mondays of the month. If you are in the Chicagoland area, head to Chicago Skirmish Wargames .com and check it out. But yeah, so they know that the first meeting, which is the second Monday, we'll usually be doing some kind of a campaign. That was the Kings of War campaign before. In a month, we're going to start the Conflict 47 campaign. And then the fourth Monday of the month, which is the second meeting, it's whatever folks want to do. So if their passion isn't K47, they still know that once a month they can gather with their friends and throw on something else, usually a small skirmish game. We've been dabbling in Space Weirdos, which is a phenomenal little rule set. Really impressed by that. We have a couple of members who like outlier games such as Gaslands, Mech Attack again, although we play it in 10 mil at the club. And then one of our members also designs his own war games. And so we'll kind of help him play test those as well. And like I said, also finding those passions people have and encouraging them in the club.
Talk to us about time, because from leaving the house, or you're doing it at your house, but other folks are going to have to travel to you. So what time are you getting started? How much of that is in setup? How much it's in gaming? How much it's in tidying up? And then what time are you finishing?
Right. So you would think, right, that being the host, I have more time not having to travel, but it winds up being about the same because I want to have the tables arranged, have most of the terrain out for them. Ideally, I will have asked ahead of time what kind of terrain they want, and I will have gone to the garage, brought that out, set it up for them, so they can just show up. And if we're all gathered here by 7, and we're going to play till 9:30 or so, and be gone by 10, and then tear down falls to me. But it really is become quite convenient to just be able to come here. I know that some other folks do have to come a distance to arrive here. Some folks manage to come. My place is on their way to and from home from work, but it's 2 Mondays a month, and I think most folks find that pretty manageable. And I enjoy the hosting process. So, what time are you getting
started in the setup to be started for them? I think 7. You said that they're coming for.
Yeah, Ideally, I'll do it the night before. I'll lay everything out so I can get home from work and get going. But but even on a rush day, if I'm getting stuff together around 5, they're showing up between 6 and 7. We're gaming at 7, done before 10. It's a nice block of time that fits into everybody's life because we're all mostly men in our 40s, and we got other things to do. This is just something that we're all really want to do together.
So it's quite a well-oiled machine in terms of when you get through the door, there could be a bit of preamble, and before you know it, you've lost 45 minutes. And you need to be kind of not hurrying people, but you're conscious that dice needs to start rolling, aren't you?
Yeah, we are. There's a bit of nudging that goes on. Usually someone has forgotten to do something that delays things enough for the rest of us to chit-chat a bit. And there is a deliberate kind of a hanging out afterwards for a little while. And we just kind of fall into a habit that works well for us. And because everyone really is there, I think, to just to be with each other as well as to game. Some of these folks have been gaming together for, well over a decade now. And coming out of COVID, I think we all realized that some of that companionship and time with our friends was missing in our lives. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a bit of a, being typical American man, we're not going to discuss it too deeply, but I think there's that thing that we're all very encouraged to be back in each other's company and having this thing that we can do together.
Yeah.
Twice a month is good.
Aye, definitely. And you're obviously creating some great content on the website. Are you doing that? Presumably you're not doing that for every game that you play. There are a lot of games you're just playing and you're not bothered about documenting it and creating content around it.
Well, I wish I was the kind of person to document, decisive enough to document everything. Ideally, I would like to put a blog post up with a couple of pictures and nothing else for every game that we play. Since it's only twice a month, but I've fallen, largely that has fallen to me, and so I've not been doing as much as I can. But if something interesting happens, I think other people would see, throw it on the blog. Just in conversing online with people, sometimes it's far easier to say, oh, we've done that too. Here's an idea. And then send them a link to the blog rather than having to type out every single time what is done. But if there's any way we can encourage other people's gaming with what we do, that's very satisfying. And when someone references our website, which happens a bit more than I thought it would, it's very, very affirming that, hey, people are enjoying this content. Keep putting it out there, even if it's only a few people here and there.
What tips and advice, because you've been doing the club a long time, if someone else wanted to start their own club, a similar type of club, what tips and advice would you give to them?
So I would say you've got to have a core group of at least 3 or 4 folks from the beginning who really want to make a club. If you have 4 guys who want to game together, that's cool. But and like I said, club may be overstating, though it's on our on our title, the organizational aspect. We don't have membership roles. We don't have dues. We don't have any of that. But and then it takes a long time to build a significant number. We made extensive use of the Meetup app, which was something I don't even know if it exists anymore, but a way of kind of meeting up at events. There was going on the major wargaming forums and putting in the find a game section. Hey, Chicago Skirmish Wargames is looking for players. And you'll have visitors and you'll have folks who come who you don't invite back because, they just randomly walk into your kitchen, your fruit bowl, and start eating your fruit and say strange things, and they don't get an invite back. But over time, you'll build up a group of people who are really interested. And then I think you just have to have someone who really wants to be an organizer, or at least other people look to organize it. That fell to me in our job, but at various times, other members of the club have kind of taken on that role and been the guy who hosts for a while, who keeps pushing it together. Helps to have somebody who's willing to kind of manage your web presence. We have a gentleman who's mostly stepped out of the active participation, but he's an amazing stuff with computers. And so the blog and the forum that we have is actually, he manages that. He takes care of that. And that's something he enjoys doing, even though we don't see him on the table very often. So making use of your group's abilities. I think having a regular scheduled night is extremely important. Let's randomly call and get together and maybe do something this month. If it's not on the calendar, it's not going to happen. And like I said, there's certain finding that balance between someone having a vision and pushing a project, and while also or a campaign, while also, like I said, finding what people are into and kind of drawing that into the club are two philosophical stages. But it takes work. It takes time. And, we're still 12 or so years later. It's a group of about 8 to 10 people at the most. And most weeks it's, 4 to 6. Also, I guess having a defined location, whether that's a game club you meet at weekly, we've done that before, or, a home where everyone feels comfortable going, helps a lot.
Did somebody really eat your fruit? Did that happen?
Oh yeah. Just walked into the house, and as we were, to be fair, we were gaming in the dining room at the time. We didn't have a basement in the old house, and we had to go through the kitchen to get there. But you just gradually grabbed food up and started eating it. And
what did they have? Banana, apple?
I think it was an orange, which is also sloppy, sticky food for miniatures.
That's not wargaming food, an orange. That's out of order. I mean, it wasn't his orange either.
I would happily give fruit to anyone who comes through and says, hey, could I have an orange? Man, you can have the whole bowl. But it's just a very odd approach. And that wasn't the only thing. That was the most notable of the gentleman who did not get invited back. But
what else did he do?
But really, it was just strange offhand comments and a general. I don't know if we were good enough for him, but it was years ago. I don't hold it. I'm sure he was happy to eat the fruit, although I don't know if the gaming was up to his standards. So
yeah, well, it's a story.
And it actually brings me to the idea of emphasizing the quality of people you want to hang out with. We're different backgrounds, different jobs, different careers, but really people that you actually want to see every week because they're people, not just because they war game. That's gold, man. that's what life's all about, just being with people who you enjoy being around.
Is it one night, one game, or are you doing a couple of different games at the same time?
It depends. So we, in the Kings of War campaign, you're obviously, the number of people who have a large army might not be the entire club. And so sometimes that will draw some of those more skirmishy oriented folks in with, hey, take half of my army and you're going to be the flank and I'll take the other flank and we'll make this a bigger game than usual. And oftentimes it looks like at the beginning we had 2 tables set up for Kings of War, and then off in the corner we had a couple of guys testing out a fellow's skirmish war set. So it's whatever it takes to get people in the room together. Same game, mixing games. Usually there's only time for one game, but there's nothing, just because we're in the middle of a campaign doesn't mean someone can't be in the corner playing Song of Blades and Heroes, or Space Weirdos or any of that sort of thing.
You ever done like annual events, bigger stuff, or went to conventions or anything like that?
Yeah, so the big event that I do every year is Adepticon, where I put on the Mech Attack rule set. It's another rules light independent skirmish game. I describe it as BattleTech, but with 1/10 of the rules and plays in a quarter of the time and is actually fun. So that's and people tend to enjoy it. And so that's where I bring out the giant science fiction city. It's on an 8x8 table. It always looks fun. People will sign up ahead of time. Usually we can fill all 8 spots, but it's aimed at providing not just a spectacle, but a fun experience. So someone shows up, they sit down, we can teach them the rules in about a half hour. And within a turn or two, they're playing themselves and only casting me occasionally, and they'll have finished the game within 3 hours, and then they're gone. So the Mech Attack, mechs are cool in small scales, but they're even cooler when they're 6 inches tall or bigger on a table, stomping around full-size buildings. And so that's the big one. And if anybody's, I'm sure everybody knows about Adepticon. It's started off this scrappy little wargaming convention almost 20 years ago. Now it's one of the largest in the country, and they still make room, thankfully, for small indie games like mine. And so you'll obviously Warhammer and Legion and whatever Privateer Press is doing and something related to Marvel are all the big names, but they've still got, they're willing to give a big old table to somebody to come and run their obscure mech set. So that's kind of our big exposure. There's also a lovely little convention called TMX, Tabletop Minions Expos. That's Adam Roper, I believe, is a gentleman who runs that. He has the Tabletop Minions podcast. Real nice guy. He's been a friend of the club for a while, and that's the polar opposite. That's like 30 guys in a college basement doing a mini campaign for a day and a half with just independent rule sets. So we kind of do both of those. Other members have done other conventions. The Midwest is rich for that. You could probably do a wargaming convention a month if you were willing to drive, a couple hours in any direction. Mm-hmm. So it's a good environment for that. But only one or two a year for me. Again, a real joy of that has been now bringing my son along. He's 12 and introducing him to running of games, and he enjoys that also.
Mm-hmm. So he's right on board with it then. It's not like you're having to kind of foursomes are all word, but come on, son, let's have a
my kids, he may or may not wind up halfway through the game sitting in the corner plugging away on his Switch. But for the beginning, for the setup, for the teardown, for teaching the rules, and even he will often be right there. When you have these indie rule sets and you're running convention games, which are based around a scenario, it's not a tournament. You can add all kinds of fun little things. And so, sometimes it just so happens that construction mech gets activated in the middle of the game and comes to fight on one of the sides, and that might very well be often piloted by my son or by some random person who steps up. So just finding a way, then it's his attention span might not last past that little bringing that mech in for a while and playing until it blows up, but finding ways to involve my son in much the way I find ways to involve my club mates in different projects. It's just part of the experience.
Swinging back to Song of Blades and Heroes, have you played any of the sort of offshoot games like Death Guns and Mutants or Ray Guns and Mutants, or Fur and Buttons was one that I've seen as well that's around?
So I have not played Song of Furred Buttons. I did think for a long time about making a teddy bear colonial forces. I like anthropomorphic animal characters in Song of Blades and Heroes. What we have played a bit of is the Fear and Faith, which is his kind of horror movie variant. A member of ours, again, who had kind of a passion for this, had made a series of scenarios tied to the Lovecraftian universe. And so it's a nice, again, very much like Song of Blades and Heroes, a fairly brief game, ideally played with defined objectives. Even more so, perhaps, in Song of Blades and Heroes. If you're going to do a horror game, you got to have, here's what the characters are doing, here's why they're there. And that was something he'd been very passionate about. And one day we just went over to his house for Halloween, and for Halloween had a couple of quick games of Fear and Faith. That was a good one. Of Gods and Mortals is highly recommended if you want to try a game that does a great job of bringing a deity mechanic in that is both not overpowering but also pivotal to the game itself. And that's a roughly platoon-sized rule set. You have a couple of groups of figures, and then you have this god that can be that is there, and then can be, if it gets defeated, can be brought back by. It's been a minute since we played that. We enjoyed that quite a bit. Even just playing it as another way of getting a platoon-sized skirmish on. I think that's the only one other ones we've played. We went through all. Well, that's not true. We did Advanced Song of Blades and Heroes, which is fun. I'm still not sure I like it better than the original, but it does add a nice bit of granularity and a bit of reaction, which the original game does not have. And then Tale of Blades and Heroes, which is their role-playing game version. And we did a campaign with Tale of Blades and Heroes. Luckily, we had a GM who was willing to play very fast and loose with moving things along. So, we weren't consulting a lot of charts. Not that you would anyway with the Song of Blades and Heroes based game. But he made a fantastic campaign for us where it felt like Song of Blades and Heroes, except for it had a bit of role play, and each person was controlling just a couple of figures instead of, a usual squad. And again, that the ethos of the club, fast and loose, make it a good story, pile on the great looking terrain. And he, at the time, his passion was Japanese terrain. So he was able to make the setting something that matched his terrain collection. So that's Song of Blades, Tale of Blades, Advanced Song of Blades, Of Gods and Mortals, and Fear and Faith. And that's only like half of the Song of Blades games. Yeah. Not to say nothing of the rest of the games that Andrea has been writing. I'm not super familiar with them, but his 4 Against Darkness seems like it would appeal to folks who enjoy Rangers of Shadow Deep. It seems to be in that vein, but I don't have any particular experience with it. Yeah.
You done any of Joe McCulloch's games? You played any of them at the club?
So we did a bit of Frostgrave. It was well received by a number of players. Personally, I wasn't terribly interested in the mage-centric nature of the game, but the rules are very well written. They make a nice story. So for the kind of if you enjoyed Mordheim and are willing to have kind of the magic user be the center of your game, I really think that this the logical step to go from there is to go to Frostgrave, or if you want to go tropical, what is it? There's an island version of it as well.
Oh yeah, Ghost. I could never say that word.
Archipelago.
Archipelago. That's it.
The Ghost Archipelago.
Yeah.
Yes. Not the Gulag Archipelago, the Ghost Archipelago.
Yeah. Try saying that drunk.
Try saying it all. So it's the Joe McCulloch stuff looks really good. I think we've just become kind of creatures of our own rut and haven't stepped out in some of these, essentially have this guy Joe writing the kind of rule sets we'd always asked for, and now we're not playing them.
So what's are you meeting this Monday coming, or is it the following Monday? What's next? What's going to be played?
So we have not yet decided. In about a month, we're starting a Conflict 47 campaign, which is the weird World War II version of Bolt Action. And so we're probably either going to try the rules out with that, or more likely it'll be whatever random skirmish games guys want to get in before the campaign starts. So again, are you familiar with Space Weirdos?
Yeah, I've seen a lot about it, and I've seen it on your website as well. So I would probably get it, but I've got that many games that I'm not playing at the moment that I want to play. So it's one of them. Exactly.
So we all have stacks of rule books, but it's a very fun game that it seems to, if you like that kind of rogue tradery, a bit zany rule set, but it's actually but also quite fast moving. He does a really excellent job of when something gets shot or when something gets shot at, having a couple different things that can happen, not just your hit. Maybe you jump around a corner, maybe you can shoot back, and managing to do that, but also streamline it. I've not seen a system that gives you so many interesting things that can happen. Obviously, so it's like 6 or 8. In a very streamlined package that feels quite cinematic and just the tiniest bit of random, but obviously still recording. And the gentleman who wrote that just released a fantasy version called Sword Weirdos. So at some point we'll probably give that a shot also. But we've been playing. I think that last time we got together we played the Space Station Zero game, which is by Adam, the Tabletop Minions fellow. Definitely worth checking out if you're a solo player or someone who wants to play 2-player cooperative. We did not have a lot of experience with those kind of games, but there it's the 25 scenarios in that book really let you sit down and just play by yourself if that's what you want to do. Not something we do because we have each other, but a lot of folks don't have an active club.
That's right. Yeah. Aye.
So
I think that was one tiny positive out of the last couple of years is that a few more solo games and solo rule sets came to the fore, and I think that's a great option for people as well, isn't it?
For sure, solo games used to be this kind of little nook. You'd find them at the end of a historical rule set, there might be a few rules tacked on how to do it yourself, or you had 2-hour war games, which operated kind of on the fringe. I think it's Ed Tixer, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he's kind of been carrying the flag for many genres of solo gaming with his reaction system for many years. But McCullough and some of these recent guys really made it, really kind of brought it to a little bit more wider audience. There's a lot to be said for a nicely produced book. As much as we are cheapskates, you open up Frostgrave and it inspires you. You've got miniatures and pretty pictures, and seeing Joe doing that kind of stuff is pretty cool. The art, the art in Space Station Zero is this very cool, almost comic style that makes you want to know what happens in the next mission. It makes you want to jump in and okay, you're past your first mission where you're just getting in the door basically and killing some robots. What happens next?
Yeah.
And so I don't have a whole lot of appeal to solo playing, but that heavy scenario focus is really appealing. And there's a lot of cross between those two genres.
So as we come round to the end of our chat, Karl, it's been a really enjoyable one. I appreciate your time and you coming on to share your wisdom. Any last words or point as to where folks could check out your website and that as well?
So yeah, our website is chicagoskirmishwargames.com. There's both the regular blog where we just put fun stuff to read, and there's a forum there. So if folks want to get together with us and game sometime, we are always looking for new players. And I just hope in some way we can inspire folks to get out there and put in the work to create a club. It's if you find people you enjoy spending time with, it is worth it. You learn so much from other folks. You acquire new skills. And it's just enriching to your life to be able to spend time. I used to describe the club as just good people with pretty miniatures on gorgeous terrain, having a lot of fun. And that's kind of what we're all shooting for. Takes a little more work to make it happen, but do it. Just do it. So yeah, that's not a whole lot of other wisdom to add behind. Just have fun gaming with good people.
Bring your own oranges, though. In fact, make it an apple. An apple's a bit more acceptable.
I tell you, I don't not appreciate the food tributes that the members bring and the beer tributes they bring when they come to game. So if you go to someone's house to game, bring them a bit of food, bring them a couple of beers, and they'll keep inviting you back. Get out there and game.
I'm going to start one now.
You should. If you have a space that is workable, get some people in it and play some games.